The observers. High Admiral Clat Ven stood before the great observation window aboard the Kelthid flagship Mathematical Precision, their crystalline form refracting the starlight into perfect geometric patterns across the bridge. Before them, displayed in holographic precision, was humanity's latest achievement in spacefaring technology, and it was, by all Kelthid standards, an abomination. "Explain to me again." Clat Ven's voice resonated through their crystalline communication frequencies, how this aberration achieves faster than light travel. Science Director Tyson Moore's crystal segments shifted in what could only be described as discomfort. "High Admiral, the humans have somehow merged organic components with traditional mechanical systems. The vessel appears to grow and adapt its own form of crystalline structures, but they're imperfect, chaotic. They don't follow any of the sacred geometric principles." The vessel in question hung in space before them, its hull a peculiar mixture of traditional metals and what appeared to be specialized organic compounds. Unlike the Kelthid ships, which were perfect dodecahedrons of crystal and light, the human vessel seemed to pulse with an inner life of its own. Tendrils of biomechanical matter occasionally extended and retracted from its surface, as if testing the void around it. "Barbaric," Clat Ven pronounced, their crystalline form vibrating with distaste. "They've taken the purity of space travel and corrupted it with biological contamination. The Council must be informed." The Kelthid had watched humanity's progress for decades, ever since the primitive species had first achieved basic spaceflight. At first, they had been dismissed as yet another young race that would either learn proper geometric principles or fade into obscurity. But these new hybrid ships, they were something entirely different. "There's more, High Admiral." Tyson Moore continued, their crystal segments aligning into the formal pattern of scientific discourse. "Our long-range observations indicate that no two human vessels are identical. They appear to encourage variation in their designs, even within the same class of ship." Clat Ven's horror resonated through their crystalline network, causing several junior officers to vibrate in sympathetic distress. Intentional asymmetry. Have they no understanding of the fundamental laws of cosmic harmony? The Kelthid civilization had achieved their dominance in this sector of space through adherence to perfect mathematical principles. Their ships were not merely vessels. They were physical manifestations of the universe's fundamental geometric truths. Each was identical to others of its class, each angle precisely calculated, each crystal face positioned to channel energy with maximum efficiency. "We've also detected something troubling," Tyson Moore added, their tone dropping to lower frequencies. "The organic components of their ships appear to be learning, adapting. Each encounter with new phenomena results in subtle changes to their structure." Clat Ven moved closer to the observation window, their crystalline form catching the light of a nearby star and breaking it into mathematically perfect spectra. "Show me their flight patterns." The holographic display shifted, showing the movement of human vessels through space. Unlike the precise, geometric patterns of Kelthid ships, the human vessels moved in seemingly random trajectories, their paths resembling more the chaos of planetary weather systems than proper space navigation. "They waste so much energy," Clat Ven observed. "Their routes are inefficient, their formations lack geometric harmony. How have they survived this long?" "That's the peculiar thing, High Admiral," Tyson Moore responded. "Despite their apparent inefficiency, they've expanded their territory faster than any species we've encountered. Their adaptability seems to compensate for their lack of proper form." Clat Ven's crystal structure vibrated in deep thought. The Kelthid had encountered many species in their long history. Some, like the silicon harmonics of the Cygnus arm, had properly appreciated geometric perfection and been welcomed into the greater galactic community. Others, like the now extinct quantum disciples, had clung to their chaotic ways until their inevitable collapse. But humans were different. They didn't simply ignore geometric principles. They actively embraced imperfection, celebrated it, turned it into a strength. It was unprecedented, and therefore dangerous. Prepare a formal report for the council, Kilatven commanded. We must decide how to proceed. These humans, they paused, their crystal structure shifting through patterns of concern. They represent something new. Their chaos could spread, could corrupt the perfect order we have maintained for millennia. As if to emphasize their point, the human vessel before them suddenly shifted its configuration, biomechanical tendrils extending to form new patterns that defied all proper geometric principles. The sight sent shivers of discord through the Kelthid crew. They must be studied, Kilatven decided, carefully, thoroughly. We must understand how they achieve spaceflight through such primitive means, and then we must decide if they represent a threat to cosmic harmony itself. Tis and Moore aligned their crystals in agreement. Shall I dispatch observation drones? No, Kilatven's response resonated with authority. This requires direct observation. Select a diplomatic vessel, something impressive enough to demonstrate proper geometric principles, but not so overwhelming as to provoke their primitive instincts. We will initiate first contact. Throughout the bridge, Kelthid crew members aligned their crystals in patterns of acknowledgement. But beneath their perfect geometric formations, a new sensation was spreading through their crystalline networks: uncertainty. For the first time in centuries, they faced something they couldn't categorize within their mathematical framework of existence. As Kilatven watched the human vessel's continued violations of proper geometric form, they felt their own crystal structure vibrate with a troubling thought. What if imperfection had advantages they had never considered? It was a dangerous idea, one that threatened to disrupt the very foundations of Kelthid society. But they pushed the thought aside, realigning their crystals into proper geometric patterns. They were the Kelthid, masters of mathematical precision, guardians of geometric truth. Whatever strange advantages these humans might have stumbled upon through their chaotic methods, proper order would prevail. It always had. The human vessel pulsed once more with its inner light, its organic components shifting in ways that defied prediction, and Kilatven felt the first microscopic crack form in their certainty, a tiny flaw in an otherwise perfect crystal structure, spreading slowly but inexorably through the mathematical precision of their worldview. The game of geometry and chaos was about to begin, and for the first time in Kelthid history, the outcome wasn't a mathematical certainty. First contact fallacy. The diplomatic vessel geometric harmony emerged from hyperspace in a perfect mathematical arc, its crystalline surfaces catching the light of Earth's sun and refracting it into precisely calculated spectra. Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force watched the alien ship's approach from the bridge of the UES Darwin and fought back a smile at its rigidly formal trajectory. "They're certainly making an entrance," her XO, Commander James Rodriguez, remarked. "Though I'm not sure if they're trying to impress us or intimidate us." "Probably both," Chen replied, watching as the alien vessel's crystal facets shifted to maintain optimal solar alignment. Status of our adaptation protocols. Rodriguez checked his neural interface, the bioorganic implant pulsing softly beneath his skin. The ship's evolution chambers are running at full capacity. Whatever we learn from this encounter, Darwin will be ready to incorporate it. The Darwin was humanity's latest achievement in biomechanical engineering, a vessel that could learn, grow, and adapt. Its hull was a complex matrix of traditional alloys and specialized organic compounds, constantly shifting and improving itself based on environmental data. To the approaching Kelthid, it must have looked like barely controlled chaos. Incoming transmission, the communications officer announced. "They're requesting we adjust our position to create a geometrically harmonious diplomatic configuration." Chen raised an eyebrow. "Send them our standard first contact protocols. Let's see how they handle a little asymmetry." The Kelthid response was immediate and clearly distressed. High Ambassador Vitil Rand's crystalline form appeared on the main view screen, its perfectly arranged facets vibrating with barely contained agitation. "Human vessel." The ambassador's translated voice carried tones of both authority and dismay. Your current orbital position violates 17 principles of proper spatial harmony. We must insist you realign according to the provided coordinates. Chen leaned forward in her captain's chair, which adjusted its biomechanical support in response to her posture. Ambassador Tilran, we appreciate your geometric concerns. However, our current position optimizes our ship's adaptive capabilities. Perhaps we could find a compromise. The suggestion of compromise sent visible waves of distortion through the ambassador's crystalline structure. Optimize adaptive capabilities. Your vessel's constant reconfiguration is precisely what we must address. Such chaos threatens the very fabric of proper space-time geometry. As if to emphasize the point, one of Darwin's biomechanical sensor arrays chose that moment to sprout a new configuration of detection tendrils, seeking to better analyze the Kelthid vessel's unique crystalline composition. The sight caused several Kelthid bridge officers to vibrate in frequencies that the universal translator labeled as geometric distress. Ambassador, Chen tried again. Our ships adapt because space itself is not unchanging. The void throws new challenges at us constantly. We found that rigid adherence to any single form leaves us vulnerable. Vitul Rand's crystal structure aligned into what Chen's cultural briefing identified as a pattern of academic condescension. Your primitive understanding of spatial mechanics is apparent. True security lies in geometric perfection. Observe. The geometric harmony began a series of precisely calculated maneuvers, its crystalline surfaces reshaping themselves through mathematical transformations that were undeniably beautiful in their precision. Each movement followed flawless geometric principles, creating patterns that seemed to echo some fundamental cosmic harmony. Chen watched with professional interest, while Darwin's sensors greedily absorbed data about the crystalline technology. She could feel her ship's subtle vibrations as its evolution chambers began processing the new information, exploring potential adaptations. Impressive, she acknowledged. But perhaps a demonstration of our own capabilities would help bridge our different philosophical approaches. Before the ambassador could object, Chen nodded to her tactical officer. The Darwin initiated one of its rapid adaptation sequences, its hull flowing like liquid metal as new configurations emerged and merged. Biomechanical systems rearranged themselves in patterns that, while chaotic to Kelthid sensibilities, represented highly optimized solutions to complex space-time interactions. The effect on the Kelthid was immediate and dramatic. Vitul Rand's perfect geometric form actually showed signs of fracturing, and several of their bridge officers had to realign their crystal structures to maintain coherence. This is abomination. Vitul Rand vibrated in frequencies of pure geometric outrage. You deliberately corrupt the perfect forms of spacetime with these organic abnormalities. Ambassador, Chen kept her voice calm. Though she noticed Darwin's internal chambers adjusting to her rising stress levels, what you call corruption, we call evolution. Our ships grow, learn, adapt. They become stronger with each challenge. Surely there's room in the galaxy for different approaches to space travel. Different approaches. The ambassador's crystal structure shifted into a pattern that required no translation to understand. Pure horror. There is only one correct approach, the path of geometric perfection. Your chaos. It threatens everything we have built, everything we understand about the universe itself. Chen felt a familiar tension building. The same tension that had preceded so many conflicts in human history. The inability of one side to accept that their way wasn't the only way. She had hoped the Kelthid's mathematical nature would make them more rational, more open to different perspectives. Instead, it seemed to have locked them into a rigid worldview that left no room for alternatives. Ambassador, she tried one last time. Perhaps if you spent some time studying our approach, you might find that adaptability and geometric precision aren't mutually exclusive. We could learn from each other. But Vitul Rand's crystal structure had already realigned into formal diplomatic patterns. We have seen enough. The Council will be informed of our findings. Your species' approach to space travel is not merely primitive. it is dangerous. Until you learn to embrace proper geometric principles, further contact will be limited. The transmission cut off abruptly, and the geometric harmony began a mathematically perfect retreat trajectory. Chen watched them go, feeling the subtle vibrations of her ship as it continued processing everything it had learned from the encounter. Well, Rodriguez broke the silence. That could have gone better. Chen nodded slowly, her hand absently stroking the biomechanical surface of her command chair, feeling its responsive adjustments. They're scared, James. Not of our technology, not of our capabilities, but of what we represent. We've shown them that their perfect geometric universe isn't the only way to exist in space. You think they'll be back? Oh yes. Chen's expression was grim. Their entire civilization is built on the idea that their way is the only right way. We've challenged that belief just by existing. They won't be able to ignore us for long. Oh yes, Chen's expression was grim. Their entire civilization is built on the idea that their way is the only right way. We've challenged that belief just by existing. They won't be able to ignore us for long. As if in agreement, the Darwin sprouted a new array of sensor tendrils, their pattern a complex mix of organic curves and geometric precision, a hybrid approach that would have horrified the Kelthid. Chen smiled slightly at her ship's continuous evolution. The Kelthid might worship perfect geometric forms, but nature had taught humanity a different lesson. The most successful organisms weren't those that achieved perfection, but those that never stopped adapting. Begin analysis of all data we collected, she ordered. Every detail about their crystalline technology, their movement patterns, their energy signatures. If they do come back, I want Darwin ready for less diplomatic interactions. The ship's evolution chambers hummed in response, already processing the encounter, preparing for future possibilities. In the view screen, the Kelthid vessel vanished into hyperspace, its departure trajectory a testament to their mathematical precision. But Chen couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just witnessed the beginning of something larger than a mere cultural misunderstanding. The galaxy was about to witness a clash between two fundamentally opposed philosophies of existence: perfect, unchanging geometry versus constant adaptation and evolution. And humanity, as usual, would have to evolve to survive. The breaking point. Fleet Commander Riventel stood before the Kelthid High Council, their crystalline form arranged in the precise, geometric patterns denoting military authority. The holographic display behind them showed the human colony of New Eden, a chaotic sprawl of asymmetrical structures that offended every principle of proper spatial arrangement. The humans have gone too far. Riventel's resonant frequencies filled the perfectly acoustic chamber. They have established this colony at the exact coordinates that disrupt the greater harmonic confluence of the Cygnus arm. The mathematical discord they create threatens the very stability of our navigation networks. The council members vibrated in harmonious disapproval as they studied the projected images. The human colony wasn't just an aesthetic affront. Its position indeed created subtle distortions in the geometric perfection of Kelthid space lanes. Worse, the humans had begun incorporating their biological technology into the planet itself, creating structures that grew and changed in unpredictable patterns. They were warned. First geometrist Palax Nur noted their crystal facets refracting light in patterns of grave concern. Ambassador Vitilran made our position clear regarding their chaotic approaches, and they responded by accelerating their violations. Riventel's crystal structure pulsed with carefully controlled outrage. Each new human vessel shows greater incorporation of biological elements. They corrupt perfect mechanical forms with organic contamination, creating ships that defy all proper predictive models. The council chamber hummed with harmonic frequencies of deliberation. The Kelthid had maintained geometric order in this sector for millennia, their crystalline ships ensuring that all space travel followed mathematically perfect principles. The humans, with their adaptive vessels and evolving colonies, represented a fundamental threat to this order. You have a proposal? High Counselor Marexvos asked, their perfect dodecahedral form casting mathematically precise shadows. "A correction is required," Rorvantel responded, their military formations shifting into attack patterns. "I have assembled a fleet of geometric perfection. We will remove this colony, demonstrating the superiority of proper mathematical principles over biological chaos." The Council's deliberation frequencies reached perfect harmony. The decision was made. Captain Sarah Chen stood in Darwin's evolution chamber, watching as her ship incorporated the latest adaptations. The biomechanical walls pulsed with activity, new neural pathways forming as the vessel processed recent sensor data about Kelthid crystal technology. "They're coming," she said quietly, more to her ship than to Commander Rodriguez, who stood beside her. "All our diplomatic channels have gone silent. Their trade ships have withdrawn from human space in perfectly calculated patterns." Rodriguez nodded, his neural interface synchronizing with Darwin's evolving systems. "The colony's defensive networks are online, but New Eden was designed as a research outpost, not a fortress. We've got 3 ships to defend against what could be an entire Kelthid battle fleet." "3 adaptive ships," Chen corrected him, placing her hand against the responsive wall of the evolution chamber. Under her touch, the biomechanical surface rippled with potential configurations. "And we've had months to study their technology, their movement patterns, their tactical preferences. They still outgun us 10 to 1, if intelligence estimates are correct." Chen smiled slightly. "The Kelthid calculate everything based on perfect geometric principles. They see our biological technology as primitive, inefficient. That's an advantage we can use." Before Rodriguez could respond, the ship's alert system pulsed through its organic circuits. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected. The tactical officer reported. "Kelthid crystal ships emerging in attack formation. It's a full battle fleet." Chen rushed to the bridge, the ship's corridors reconfiguring themselves to speed her passage. The main view screen showed dozens of Kelthid vessels emerging from hyperspace, their crystalline forms arranging themselves into mathematically perfect attack patterns. "They're beautiful," Rodriguez admitted, watching the geometric dance of the alien fleet. Every movement precisely calculated, every position optimized for maximum tactical advantage. "And completely predictable," Chen added. "Signal the other ships. Adaptation protocols at maximum. Let's show them why nature favored evolution over static perfection." The Kelthid attack began exactly as their geometric principles dictated, a perfect spherical advancement that would theoretically allow them to concentrate fire from all angles. Their crystal ships glowed with accumulated energy, preparing to unleash mathematically optimized destruction. But the 3 human vessels didn't follow any recognized tactical pattern. The Darwin and its sisters, Mendel and Lamarck, moved in seemingly random trajectories, their biomechanical hulls constantly shifting and adapting. Where Kelthid fire struck, organic armor absorbed and analyzed the energy patterns, evolving new defenses in real time. "They're trying to force us into a standard defensive formation," Rodriguez observed, watching the tactical display. "Their entire attack strategy assumes we'll respond according to classical space combat geometry." Chen nodded. "Then let's give them some chaos to calculate. Execute Operation Cambrian." The 3 human ships suddenly split apart, their movements becoming even more erratic. Biomechanical tendrils extended from their hulls, releasing clouds of organic particles that began to interact with the Kelthid's crystal energy signatures. The effect was immediate and devastating. The perfectly ordered Kelthid formation began to show signs of disruption as their energy weapons passed through the organic clouds, their carefully calculated trajectories distorted by the chaotic biological interference. "Their shields are geometrically perfect," Chen explained, watching as the Kelthid fleet struggled to adapt to the unexpected tactic. "But perfect crystal structures have natural frequencies that can be disrupted. Darwin's been studying their technology since first contact, evolving countermeasures they never imagined possible." The space between the fleets became a swirling chaos of organic particles and crystal energy. The Kelthid ships, designed for precision and mathematical certainty, found their perfect formations disrupted by unpredictable biological interactions. Their attempts to maintain geometric harmony actually made them more vulnerable, as they refused to deviate from tactically perfect positions, even when those positions became compromised. Multiple Kelthid vessels showing signs of crystal stress. Tactical reported. Their formation is destabilizing. Chen watched as the first Kelthid ship's crystal structure began to fracture, its perfect geometric form compromised by the organic chaos surrounding it. They can't process this, she realized. Their entire tactical doctrine is based on mathematical perfection. When faced with true chaos, they don't know how to adapt. The battle devolved into exactly the kind of chaotic engagement the Kelthid had never trained for. Human ships seemed to appear from impossible angles, their organic technology allowing them to move in ways that defied geometric prediction. Each Kelthid response, calculated for mathematical perfection, was met with biological unpredictability. "They're breaking formation," Rodriguez announced, unable to keep the surprise from his voice. "The entire fleet is falling back." Indeed, the Kelthid ships were retreating, their perfect crystal forms showing signs of stress and damage. But they maintained geometric harmony even in retreat, their withdrawal following mathematically optimal paths that made them predictable targets for the evolved weapons of the human vessels. As the last Kelthid ship disappeared into hyperspace, Chen felt Darwin pulse beneath her feet, processing everything it had learned from the encounter. The ship's biomechanical systems were already incorporating new adaptations, preparing for the next engagement. "They'll be back," she said quietly, "with a larger fleet, with new calculations, with attempts to impose geometric order on our chaos. But they don't understand. We're not fighting against their perfection. We're evolving with every encounter." Rodriguez studied the tactical display, where fragments of fractured crystal ships drifted in space alongside clouds of still active organic particles. "Think they'll learn from this? Adapt their own tactics?" Chen shook her head. "That's what makes this tragic. Their entire civilization is built on the belief that perfect geometric harmony is the only right way to exist in space. Learning from chaos, adapting to imperfection. It would mean acknowledging that their fundamental beliefs might be wrong." The battle was over, but Chen knew this was just the beginning. The Kelthid would return, seeking to impose their perfect order on humanity's chaos. But humanity had long ago learned nature's most important lesson. In an ever-changing universe, adaptation was the only path to survival. Darwin's evolution chambers hummed with activity, preparing for the wars to come. Evolution of war. 6 months after the Battle of New Eden, the war room aboard the UES Darwin had evolved. Like everything else about the ship, the command center had adapted to meet new challenges. Biomechanical displays pulsed with tactical data, their organic matrices processing information in ways that would have horrified their Kelthid opponents. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the center of this controlled chaos, watching as multiple holographic projections showed the movement of Kelthid crystal ships across contested space. Behind her, the wall-mounted evolution chambers hummed continuously, analyzing battle data and generating new adaptations. "They're learning," Commander Rodriguez observed, his neural interface synchronized with Darwin's tactical systems. "Not adapting, exactly, but they're developing new geometric formations, more complex mathematical patterns." Chen nodded, studying the precise movements of the Kelthid fleet. "They're trying to solve chaos with more complex equations, adding layers of geometric perfection to counter our unpredictability." The tactical display showed the latest engagement between human and Kelthid forces in the Protean sector. The Kelthid ships now moved in multi-dimensional geometric patterns, their formations shifting through mathematical progressions that were beautiful in their complexity. It was like watching a cosmic ballet choreographed by a mad mathematician. "Battle review," Chen commanded, and the display shifted to show the recent conflict. "Focus on their new attack patterns." A holographic representation showed a Kelthid battle group executing what human analysts had dubbed the fractal cascade. a complex series of geometric transformations that allowed their crystal ships to concentrate fire from constantly changing angles. It was an impressive adaptation of their rigid tactical doctrine, an attempt to generate controlled chaos through mathematical precision. "They killed 3 of our ships with that maneuver," Rodriguez noted grimly. "The pattern was complex enough that even our adaptive systems couldn't predict all the firing solutions. But look what happened next," Chen pointed as the display continued. The surviving human ships had done something unprecedented. They'd begun to synchronize their adaptive responses. Instead of each vessel evolving independently, they'd formed a collective adaptive network. Biomechanical tendrils had extended between ships, sharing evolutionary data in real time. The result was a coordinated chaos that even the Kelthid's new fractal patterns couldn't contain. "That's why they're escalating," Chen said quietly. "We're not just adapting as individual ships anymore. We're evolving as a fleet, developing collective responses to their geometric attacks. And it terrifies them." The war room's organic displays pulsed with new tactical data as reports came in from across human space. The Kelthid had launched a major offensive, their crystal ships appearing in unprecedented numbers. But something was different about this attack. Multiple signatures detected, the tactical officer reported, his voice tight with concern. They're using new ship designs. The crystal structures are unlike anything we've seen before." The tactical display shifted to show the approaching Kelthid fleet. Their ships still maintained perfect geometric forms, but they'd abandoned their traditional dodecahedral designs. These new vessels were complex polyhedrons, their crystal facets arranged in patterns that seemed to fold through dimensions human eyes couldn't quite process. "They'd been studying us," Rodriguez realized. "All these months, while we thought they were just refining their old tactics, they were developing entirely new geometric principles." Chen watched as the new Kelthid ships executed maneuvers that should have been impossible for crystal structures of their size. "They're not adapting their tactics," she understood suddenly. "They're pushing their own geometric principles to their absolute limits, making perfection more perfect." The implications were staggering. The Kelthid, rather than learning from their defeats and incorporating chaos into their designs, had doubled down on their commitment to geometric perfection. They'd developed new mathematical principles, new crystalline architectures, all in an attempt to prove that perfect order could overcome evolutionary adaptation. "All ships begin collective evolution protocols," Chen ordered. "Link adaptive systems and prepare for deep integration. If they're going to show us the ultimate expression of their philosophy, we'll show them ours." Throughout human space, vessels like the Darwin began to change. Biomechanical systems that had evolved independently for months now linked together, sharing adaptive traits across an entire fleet. Ships that had once been individuals became part of a greater evolutionary network, their organic components learning and growing as one. The Kelthid attack, when it came, was like nothing humanity had ever faced. Their new ships moved with impossible precision, their crystal facets channeling energy in ways that seemed to bend space itself. Each formation was a perfect mathematical expression, every attack calculated to an extent that bordered on divine geometry. But the human fleet had evolved beyond simple adaptation. The linked vessels moved as a single organism, their responses coordinated not by tactical doctrine, but by shared evolutionary imperatives. Where Kelthid geometry predicted chaos, the human ships generated order. Where the crystals expected order, they encountered chaos. "They still don't understand," Chen whispered, watching as the battle unfolded across multiple star systems. "They think if they can achieve perfect enough geometry, complex enough mathematics, they can solve the equation of our evolution. But evolution isn't an equation to be solved." The war room's displays showed humanity's greatest achievement, not the victory of chaos over order, but the emergence of something entirely new. Ships linked by adaptive networks, sharing evolutionary traits, developing collective responses to threats. It was biology on a cosmic scale, the principles that had shaped life on Earth, now shaping the future of space warfare. Multiple Kelthid vessels showing signs of crystal fatigue, Tactical reported. Their new geometries are pushing their structural tolerances to the limit. Chen nodded grimly. They're trying to transcend their own nature, but they're doing it by becoming more of what they already are. More perfect, more geometric, more rigid. They're breaking themselves against the flexibility of evolution. The battle raged across space, perfect crystal geometry against evolving organic chaos. But with each engagement, each adaptation, the true nature of the conflict became clearer. This wasn't just a war between species or technologies. It was a war between opposing views of existence itself. The Kelthid believed in achieving perfection through mathematical precision, in finding the one true way to exist in space. Humanity, through its biomechanical ships and adaptive networks, demonstrated that perfection was not a destination but a journey. Evolution didn't seek perfection. It sought survival, adaptation, constant change. As the linked human fleet drove back another Kelthid attack, Chen felt Darwin pulse beneath her feet, its evolution chambers processing new data, sharing discoveries across the adaptive network. The ship was no longer just learning from battle. It was learning from every ship in the fleet, participating in an evolutionary leap that was reshaping the nature of space warfare. They'll retreat soon, Rodrigues predicted, watching the Kelthid formations begin to show signs of strain. Their new geometries are brilliant, but they can't sustain that level of mathematical precision indefinitely. And when they do retreat, Chen added, they'll go back to their drawing boards, trying to calculate even more perfect formations, even more complex crystal structures. They'll keep trying to solve chaos with order until... She left the sentence unfinished, but everyone in the war room understood. The Kelthid would keep pushing their philosophy to its limits, seeking geometric perfection in a universe that fundamentally rejected the concept. And with each attempt, they would face an enemy that had evolved beyond their capacity to calculate. The war wasn't over, but its eventual outcome was becoming clear. Not because humanity was stronger or more advanced, but because they had embraced a fundamental truth about existence that the Kelthid couldn't accept. In an ever-changing universe, the ability to change was the only lasting advantage. Perfect imperfection. The grand hall of geometric harmony lay in ruins. Perfect crystal spires, maintained in mathematical precision for millennia, showed fracture patterns that no equation could have predicted. Through the shattered dome, stars wheeled in chaotic patterns that seemed to mock the Kelthid's dreams of universal order. High Counselor Mirexvos stood amid the destruction, their crystalline form vibrating with frequencies of deep distress. Before them, a holographic display showed the current state of the war, a war that had pushed Kelthid civilization to the brink of collapse. We have achieved peak geometric perfection, Fleet Commander Rivantel reported, their battle-damaged form struggling to maintain proper harmonic patterns. Our latest crystal configurations represent the ultimate expression of mathematical space combat. And still we cannot overcome their chaos. The display showed the most recent battle, where a linked network of human bioships had shattered a Kelthid formation whose geometric complexity had taken years to calculate. The human vessels had evolved mid-battle, developing collective responses that defied every prediction, every mathematical model. Perhaps, a new voice resonated through the chamber, causing both leaders to shift their crystal structures in surprise. First, geometrist Palax Nur emerged from the shadows, their once perfect form showing signs of asymmetrical growth. Perhaps we have been asking the wrong questions. Heresy. Rivantel vibrated in hostile frequencies. Our defeat comes from insufficient geometric perfection. We must calculate more precise formations, develop more complex crystal structures. We have reached the limits of crystal geometry. Palax Nur interrupted, committing a breach of harmonic protocol that sent shockwaves through the chamber. Each more perfect formation we create becomes more brittle, more vulnerable to chaos. We are breaking ourselves against their adaptability. Mirexvos studied the fallen geometrist carefully. Palax Nur had spent the past year in deep isolation, studying battle recordings and ancient mathematical texts. The asymmetry in their crystal structure suggested they had discovered something that had altered their very nature. "Explain," Merexvos commanded. Plax Nur moved to the center of the chamber, their imperfect form casting chaotic shadows that would have been forbidden in ancient times. "I have found references in our oldest records, theories that were dismissed as mathematical heresy. They speak of dynamic geometry." The very phrase caused Rventel's crystal structure to vibrate in revulsion. Impossible. Geometry is perfect, unchanging. To suggest otherwise is to deny the fundamental nature of reality. Reality, Plax Nur countered, is what has been defeating us. Look at the human ships, not with horror at their chaos, but with understanding. They have discovered something we forgot. The universe itself is not static. It evolves, adapts, changes. Perfect geometry is not an absolute law, but a moment in time. The chamber resonated with frequencies of conflict as ancient certainties battled with undeniable realities. Through the shattered dome, they could see the human fleet in high orbit, their biomechanical ships constantly shifting, evolving, becoming something new with each passing moment. "You suggest we abandon our principles." Rventel's military harmonics carried threats of geometric violence. "Corrupt our perfect forms with biological contamination." "I suggest," Plax Nur responded, their asymmetric form somehow carrying its own strange harmony, "that we expand our understanding of perfection. The humans have not defeated geometric principles. They have shown us that geometry itself can evolve." Merexvos moved to the holographic display, studying the patterns of human ships with new awareness. Their seemingly chaotic movements actually followed complex fractals, their adaptations creating geometric patterns that existed in time rather than space. "Show me," the High Counselor commanded. Plax Nur approached the display, their crystal structure beginning to shift in ways that would have been impossible months ago. "I have discovered how to maintain geometric harmony while allowing for controlled evolution. Small imperfections, carefully cultivated, can actually strengthen our crystal structures rather than weakening them." To demonstrate, Plax Nur's form began to change. But unlike the rigid transformations of traditional Kelthid geometry, these changes followed organic patterns while maintaining mathematical elegance. It was like watching the birth of a new kind of geometry, one that breathed and grew. "This is what the humans have been trying to teach us," Plax Nur continued. "Not that chaos defeats order, but that true order must include the capacity for change. Their ships are not an affront to geometry. They are geometry in motion, mathematics that lives and evolves." From orbit, a signal arrived. The human fleet, led by the now legendary UES Darwin, was requesting communication. On the main display, Captain Sarah Chen appeared, her biomechanical command chair adapting to her posture in ways that suddenly seemed less offensive to Kelthid sensibilities. "Your civilization stands at a crossroads," Chen said without preamble. "We've detected the changes in your central crystal matrix. You're beginning to understand, aren't you?" Merexvos stepped forward, their crystal structure unconsciously mimicking some of Plax Nur's adaptive patterns. "We are considering new geometric possibilities." Chen nodded, and behind her, Darwin's biomechanical systems pulsed with patterns that almost resembled Kelthid crystal formations. Evolution doesn't mean abandoning order. It means allowing order itself to grow, to improve, to become something more than it was. Your crystal technology has potential we can barely imagine, if you'll let it evolve." The chamber hummed with harmonic frequencies as ancient traditions warred with new possibilities. Rventel and their military faction vibrated with frequencies of resistance, clinging to dreams of perfect, unchanging geometry. But others, led by Plax Nur, were already beginning to explore the possibilities of dynamic crystal structures. "We offer partnership," Chen continued. "Not submission, not absorption, but true collaboration. Imagine crystal ships that can adapt while maintaining geometric harmony. Imagine mathematical principles that evolve without losing their fundamental elegance. Mirexvos studied their own crystal structure, noting how it had already begun to change in subtle ways, incorporating microscopic imperfections that somehow made the whole stronger. And if we refuse, if we choose to maintain pure geometric perfection, then you'll calcify, Chen replied simply. You'll become like the perfect crystals in a museum, beautiful, unchanging, and ultimately irrelevant to the flow of life around them. The choice hung in the air like a mathematical equation awaiting solution. The Kelthid had spent millennia pursuing perfect geometry, building their entire civilization on the principle that the universe could be reduced to unchanging mathematical truth. But as Mirexvos watched Black's Nur demonstrate their new dynamic geometries, as they studied the evolved harmony of the human ships in orbit, they realized that the universe had been trying to teach them a greater truth. Perfection wasn't an end state, but a process. True geometric harmony wasn't achieved by freezing a perfect pattern in place, but by allowing patterns to grow and change while maintaining their underlying mathematical beauty. We choose evolution. Mirexvos announced, their crystal structure beginning to shift in ways that would have been impossible mere months ago. Not the abandonment of geometry, but its elevation to something greater. We choose perfect imperfection. Throughout the chamber, throughout the crystal spires of the Kelthid capital, throughout their vast network of mathematically harmonious worlds, the decision resonated. Some crystal structures shattered, unable to adapt to the new frequencies. Others began to change, incorporating controlled imperfections, allowing for the possibility of growth and adaptation. The war ended not with the victory of chaos over order, but with the recognition that true order must include the capacity for change. Human biomechanical technology merged with evolving crystal geometry, creating ships and structures that were neither purely organic nor purely crystalline, but something new, something that combined the mathematical precision of the Kelthid with humanity's gift for adaptation. And in orbit above the Kelthid homeworld, the UES Darwin sprouted crystal formations among its biomechanical systems, while Kelthid ships began to pulse with hints of organic life. It was the dawn of a new era, where perfection was found not in static forms or pure chaos, but in the endless dance of evolution itself. The universe, vast and ever-changing, wheeled on above them all, its cosmic dance a perfect blend of mathematical precision and endless adaptation. And in the ruins of the Hall of Geometric Harmony, a new kind of order was taking root, one that understood that the most perfect geometry of all was the geometry of change itself.